Well, welcome everyone. Thank you all for taking the time out of your day to participate today. And we will, my goal would be to keep us to an hour. So if we can, whatever we need to do to keep that would be great. Did everyone get a copy of the agenda and all the other documents that I sent? Vicki sent the minutes. We need to approve. Any comments on either the September 9th or 22nd meeting minutes?
I'll move to approve the September 9th and September 22nd minutes.
I'll second.
Discussion?
The only comment I'll make is outstanding job on the minutes. They were really great detail. Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you.
The only comment I had is we agreed to review the investment policy statement at a later date. And I don't believe we've done that.
You are correct. We have not done that.
That doesn't mean we can't approve the minutes.
Any other comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The minutes passed. So I would just like to review the actions that we took last year, just as a reminder to all of us. And in particular, there were a number of items that we agreed on in September that took a bit of time to accomplish. So I just wanted to refresh everyone on that. We did approve moving out of the stable value fund in order to acquire the fee stabilization and all the items that took a little bit of time to accomplish, because when we went to have all the documents signed for T. Rowe Price, it came to light that the signatories had not been updated. So we went through a process of updating the signatories and then getting the documents signed. So those all got signed and you got copies of what was signed. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that we, updated both of the plans in terms of the stable value fund, in terms of the funds being used in the fee structure. And T. Rowe Price did send out notifications to the participants on the fund changes, but am I correct, Dan, that there was not a notice sent out on anything to do with the stable value fund yet?
That's correct, because nothing has happened per se with the stable value fund.
Correct. Okay. So the
We've just given notice, right? We've just given the required, what was it, 12-month notice, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Correct.
I think, Dan, are you going to give us an update on that during your presentation?
I will. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Since that was signed in December, I believe that will occur a little bit later than we had originally thought that it would, because we did have to give the 12 months notice. So probably be closer to the end of this year rather than October.
Yeah, we've had some discussions outside of your committee, so hopefully Dan has some, I don't know, some updates on that movement.
Okay.
I'll let him, I won't steal his thunder, but I'll let him speak in a few on that.
Okay, and then the one item that we, as Rick noted, that we have not yet accomplished was to review the investment policy statement. So that is still to be done. Any yes, go ahead, Rick.
If I may be as so bold, I did review it. I think it's a good document. I had a couple comments, just basically things to confirm are being done. We don't need to discuss it now, but I could forward it to you and you can see if you care to forward it to the rest of the committee.
Well, I think if the committee is to review it, we should all review it and put it on an agenda item and discuss it at that time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, I agree with that. That's probably makes the most sense, Rick.
Okay, I'll send it to you and you can send it to everybody and we'll discuss that at a later time.
Okay, that sounds great.
Great.
So the other item that we had discussed but has not occurred completely was to have some correspondence with participants. And I do believe that's necessary between now and the time that, you know, all the items that we agreed to, especially the stable value shift, goes into effect. So I know that, you know, TRO definitely communicates with the participants in terms of the fund changes. We had talked about sending a communication from the committee, and I guess we have not done that as yet. And I know we talked about it, but I haven't even drafted that. And part of my question was the process of actually having us communicate with participants. It's certainly easy to communicate with active participants through town hall and through the school district. However, there are also inactive participants, you know, folks who are retired. So that creates a little bit of a different shift. But Dan, correct me if I'm mistaken, you all do communicate with all participants, right?
We do, absolutely. Yeah. Anyone that's essentially got a balance, you know, or we see is eligible on the system, we absolutely do.
Okay. So would we be able to communicate through you? Would we be able to have you send communication to the participants?
I mean, nothing that isn't TRO price created, you know, unfortunately. Obviously there's a lot of, you know, legal stuff that gets involved with that, and knowing TRO's legal team,
yeah,
I'm not even gonna ask.
So that's an area where we need to probably figure out how we would communicate with all the participants, since we can't do it through you. And I don't even know if we have all of their contact information, because that's really handled by you. Am I right, Nicole?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I have access, and I don't know if Holly might, I'm not sure, they just really make contributions, but yeah, I have access to everyone who's in the TRO price system. That's where we go online. So I guess it would just be a matter of running a report to get all that information. I think in the past, when we switched to TRO price, and Lynn Warren was still at the school at the time, the town ended up doing that because we were the sponsor of the plan. We had to do mass mailings from the town, and we ended up doing it. So if we had to do it, we could do it.
Okay. So there probably is an existing methodology. We just haven't used it recently.
I can also add that Passy has the capability of doing mass mailings for a very low cost as well.
Okay. Yes.
we just need access to that download, and then we use a third party to do all those mass mailings. Do it for many clients. It's very efficient.
I think that's what we did when we did that mailing. We did a mass download, and we did the mailing through the town.
Okay. So the topics would be the stable value fund adjustment, and also a clear description of the change in fees, and how that came about. So I think we need to draft that, what we would want to say. That was our sense from the last meeting. And then as far as timing, I think we can take our cue from when the actual changeover will occur. Probably needs to happen, I would say, before our next meeting or right after our next meeting, which is probably in September. We talked about having twice a year meetings. So any thoughts on that from the rest of the committee?
I think the closer you do it to when it's going to occur, the better off. That way people are informed and they're not caught off guard. So I would agree with you doing it after, soon thereafter our next meeting.
Is that, well, question, when would the changes be affected, to Rick's point?
I think that's going to be Dan's part to go.
Yeah,
over
sorry,
that.
I was on mute there. So we're still kind of waiting on a date. So there's kind of a couple things that are going on here. So as you know, as Gene said, we started what we call the 12-month put on the stable value fund, which basically just allows us in 12 months to, you know, lift all restrictions on the stable value fund and do what's called a plan reset or plan re-enrollment, right? Where we re-enroll every participant into an age appropriate, you know, retirement date fund.
Unless they personally opt out.
Correct. Absolutely. And we have to notify them ahead of time, you know, with communication saying this is going to happen on said date. Now, what's also kind of happening in the background is T. Rowe Price is rolling out an automation for that plan reset or re-enrollment. Right now we can do it. However, it's a manual process, and we're actually rolling out automation for that process this summer. So when we actually roll that out, and I don't have an exact date on that yet, but it's looking like June or July, I'm actually going to push to alleviate the stable value fund put at that time, or, you know, get it lifted, and then we'll come back to you guys in September and say, you know, do we want to roll with this now? So there is a chance.
The question is it going to happen after a September meeting or not? Because we would have to agree as a committee on the correspondence, or at least review it and that sort of thing. And if our next meeting is in September, and then the following meeting is March, if you told us that it was going to be May, then we may have to have a special meeting, you know, prior. If it feels like it's going to be after September, then we can push. We've got these considerations for correspondence, but maybe September is the right time to consider what that correspondence looks like, because you've got more details and that sort of thing. Is that the way that it feels?
I would agree with that. I would say that's a safe bet too. Yeah.
So it definitely isn't going to happen before September if you're not doing anything until July. And we originally we thought October, because that was the dates that we were looking at for this signing, and of course that got pushed back to December. So we're probably looking at a fall implementation.
Yeah, I mean, even if we wanted to stay on the original 12-month, you know, cycle of when we thought the stable value put would be lifted, we would be targeting December-ish anyway. So if we have a meeting in September, you know, we could still target November, December, you know, whatever you guys think is best.
Dan, were you thinking that earlier, because you did mention June, July for the rollout? Is that a realistic, or is that optimistic?
No, it's definitely realistic. I mean, I talked to my product team ahead of this meeting because I knew we'd be getting into details about this. You know, they just don't have an exact date for me, but we were hoping to roll it out in first quarter here, but we're you know, in the build process right now, and they feel confident that it's going to be an early summer rollout. Okay, for that automation.
In that case, I think, you know, being ready to roll in our September meeting. So it sounds like I should do some work. We should do some work between now and September to craft exactly what we want to say and get it and approve it and start moving with it, you know, right after our September meeting. Does that seem reasonable to folks?
Yes.
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 Okay. So with that, I think we can ask Tom, Ron, and Dan to give us an update on where things are from their perspective on the plan. And
thank you, Gene.
And if if you would like to share screen, you should be able to do so.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Gene, for putting this all together. Very thorough job as always. And thanks for the committee to join today. If you just to make sure everybody knows everybody, Dan Mattson is from T. Rowe Price, and Tom Reinhardt is from Passy. He's more on the portfolio management side, and myself, Ron Fishman, is a principal of Passy as well. And just so you know, again, I just want to make sure everybody knows our roles and responsibilities real quickly is sort of dual role. We also administer the plan. besides the investment advisory services. So we have kind of two sides to the coin. Administrative roles and responsibilities, making sure all the deposits are in order, making sure everybody gets the right allocation, all the compliance stuff that would be necessary for this type of plan. And then, of course, the investment advisory side, which is acting, in certain capacities as fiduciaries on your behalf. So our sort of agenda today, following off of Jean's, is to just turn it over to Dan because, it's more of a recap of the progress since our last meeting. So he'll go through, the fee levelization and the fund changes. I know I've talked a little about the stable value just now and the target date reset. And then I think part of the agenda was sort of turning it over back to Passy to go over sort of the state of affairs again. We did do an investment review not too long ago, but we'll give you a more up-to-date snapshot of how things are going with the funds. And then we'll turn it over to just some house cleaning items. There's one particular thing that I'm not sure if we ever mentioned. There's what is called a plan expense account that this plan has been accruing dollars. And since I don't remember the background, but it was going to be used to offset fees, I think at one point, but that hasn't happened. So it's accumulated quite a bit of money, a little over $6,000. So we're going to ask the committee to approve a reallocation to the participants. It sort of comes out of the expense ratios of the funds, and T. Rowe credits the plan expense account. So with our going to fee levelization, that obviously is going to stop in the future, but there's no usage of that 6,600. So we're going to recommend that it goes back to the participants pro rata. It came out pro rata, so it'll go back in pro rata. And then just wrap up any other Q&A, things like that is on your mind. Of course, talking about setting up participant meetings too, as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Dan and kind of give his overview of where the progress, where we are since our last meeting.
Thanks, Ron. And just to recap on that, what we call a RISA bucket, if you will, that has the $6,600. That was a pricing that I had done on the plan. Geez, I've only been here for 3.5 years. So a couple of years back when I first got you guys as a client, we kind of repriced the plan, if you will. And T. Rowe said at that time that we had a little bit of extra revenue that we could share back, to the plan and put it in that ERISA bucket account. We do fund it quarterly, and as Ron mentioned, it can be used to pay plan expenses, or any qualified plan expense, I should say. And you really don't have any, with T. Rowe Price. So as Ron mentioned, what a lot of clients do is just reallocate pro rata or per capita back to participants, and it's a very easy process to do that. We just need a letter or an email letter of instruction to do that.
So, hey, Gene, while we're still on that topic, I'll make a motion to return pro rata the $6,600 that's been allocated for expenses historically, something like that.
I'll second.
Okay, I guess I didn't even know. I've been on the committee a while, and I didn't even know about this fund. So good to have extra. It's always good to have extra money that you can give back to participants. So I think that's great.
As part of our reconciliation, and in other words, we track that account, and I do remember when it was repriced, and I think the intentions were it was going to offset some fees, but the fee structure of this plan is so simple it wasn't ever used. So again, T. Rowe will sort of automate that process to sort of go back pro rata to all the participants, and it will kind of go in as I think it would go in as sort of like an earnings adjustment. It wouldn't go in as a contribution. It would kind of be going in as an earnings adjustment, a plus earnings adjustment. So good news.
Correct. Yep. And again, just to do that, Nicole, either you or somebody else authorized just needs to send me an email outlining that you guys want to return the ERISA bucket to participant accounts pro rata.
Like I said, going forward, there will be no more funding of that account because we've taken all the revenue share away.
Correct. So that leads me into my next topic is,
Actually,
kind of what
Hang
we,
on.
Dan, before you do that, we actually had a motion and a second, so we should vote on it.
sorry about that.
It's okay. So any other comments from the committee?
Two things. One is, what would be the date that this reallocation would happen? And then do we need to send a communication to each participant as to what's going on?
The date would be as soon as, I got the email authorizing it, we would do it, same day, if not next day. In terms of communications, it's there's nothing that's legally required per se, but I have had clients craft a quick email or something like that, just as a positive, to say, hey guys, look at, we're giving you, a little bit extra money here. So something to think about.
Could go hand in hand with all this other stuff that you're doing, in other words, just.
Well,
Go ahead.
the only thing that I question that, I think the other stuff that we're doing is going to be later in the year, and it sounds to me like this allocation process is going to be sooner.
Good point.
And I think anytime you're affecting someone's account, that's just me. I think communication as to what's going on. Our company just did the same thing, just a simple, doesn't have to be elaborate. This was being accrued for this reason, no longer needed. It's coming back to you on a prorated basis, effective May 1st or whatever date you guys decide to pick, and just be done.
I think that's a good idea.
I actually agree, Skip. I think that is a good idea. So Dan, is that something T-Row would be willing to do, even though it's not legally required? Or Ron, would that be something Passy would take on?
Again, it's all communication. Anyone can draft a memo. It's just what's the dissemination of that. If you want to use our third party click to mail, get it out to everybody. Again, Nicole, I don't know what the internal process, if you have emails, like what is your normal delivery of information that you've done in the past for any items regarding the town?
We have, like, the last thing we did was when we moved to T. Rowe Price. Otherwise, there is no communication from the town of Old Lyme.
No payroll stuffers or anything like that?
No, we've done email for, when Tom came once to go over some things. And I think Holly maybe just let the people know they could sign up and come over and talk to him about retirement and all of that. But we really don't have somebody that's, I'm it, I would say. And
I wasn't sure if that outside the pen, any type of communication you've ever done to employees. No. All right. So
just
again, we can do it. It's just a cost to, disseminate. I would say it would be done the old fashioned way via mail. If we could download again, everybody's addresses, and it could be a very, small, quick memo as to the positive effects of what this is happening. And I wouldn't do, obviously we'd get the date from T-Row and then we would make sure that it's included in there. So.
Yeah. So I would say is in terms of the date, you guys can pick. If you say, because we don't need to notify participants 30 days ahead of time. So if the committee today says, let's pick, May 1st as the date, then I would say that's what you put in the letter to me to so that we've got it on the system. That's the day we're going to give it back to people. And that's the day you put in your communication to participants, or June 1st or whatever.
So one of the questions I have is, this seems expensive to mail things to people. We're talking, typically if T-Row is sending them something, it's electronic, right?
It's a great question. It's if we have emails on the system, right? And
okay.
So if we do have emails on the system, we do send out communications to them that way. If not, we try to capture people when they log into their website. But that's always been a struggle, no matter who the record keeper is getting email addresses.
I just got this in the mail yesterday from the plan, and I'm pretty sure I have an email on the account.
Yeah, Dan, I get you do your normal legalese, communications. You wouldn't do something like a third party letter. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right. Yeah. We can't really, customize communications.
Right. So it's.
Do you have any?
Could you just put it in with the paycheck?
That's what
a little note with the paycheck.
pay stuff, like a payroll stuffer?
We could do that. I mean, I could give some to Holly if she knows who's still there, but we've got a lot of people that are not, that are retired or gone, and the majority of them is, I want to say, is the school. You know, there's 200 participants from the school district, and that's a lot of turnover over there in the positions that are a part of the plan. So, you know, that's why we don't do mailings and we haven't done anything, because it's time consuming for us. We don't have a lot of staff and for time. So, and we could
honestly,
do it.
we don't stuff payroll. Everything is electronic.
Right.
There's no bi-weekly payroll stuffing happening.
It's
Who does it?
it's
Who does
in the
it?
school district.
Who's
Yeah.
the payroll provider?
We do it in-house.
Oh, you do it in-house, okay. And it's electronic.
Yeah, everyone is required to have direct deposit. And they
They
get
don't
their
get a
vouchers
stub?
emailed to them. What? Who's that?
Oh,
What?
they don't get a stub? No,
Via email.
just email? Okay.
Yeah, the problem is as was mentioned by Nicole, the pro rata approach goes to everyone who has a balance, and that doesn't mean that you're still working. So you know, you're gonna have people that don't get paychecks, but we still want to communicate with them. I think the best way, if you really want to do this, is to download mostly everybody has an address on file at Tiro. So if we can get the addresses, the last mailing address on system, and you can do this third party, you know, mailing that's not that expensive, especially for a one pager. It might, you know, depending on how many there are, it's very inexpensive.
So my only concern, of course, is the pension committee does not have a budget. So I don't know who pays for it.
Well, I got an idea. You can use the ERISA bucket. You know,
You certainly can. Yeah.
it's got $6,600 in it. You can parse out, you know, a few $100, you know, for mailings, and you know, the rest goes back to the participants. I don't know.
It'll cost $6,500 to send out the mail. No, I'm just kidding.
Boy, I hope not. So
That's a very justifiable use of funds.
Yeah. So I guess that makes sense. If we can use the funds, a portion of those funds, to tell people that we're paying them back, I think that's.
It's only going to be a couple $100 with 251 participants. So I mean, it's not a.
Okay. All right. So,
Dan, what's the total? Do you have you don't have the total with balances, do you?
Gene,
can
you,
bucket? 251.
It is 251
as of the end of last year.
Okay. Yeah. How about this? Gene, I'll shoot you a quote to mail a one pager using this, you know, third party, and it may cost you, it may be $50. I don't know. So when I base it on 250 participants roughly, just to give you an idea.
Gene, could you do a twofer and also talk about the funds that will happen in the fourth quarter in the same letter, just to notify people of both?
We have to notify people of that change, before we do that plan reset anyway, because we have to give everyone appropriate, you know, time to either, you know, opt out of the process or stay in it. So T-Row will be handling that communication, you know, later in the year when we do finally, have a date set.
okay. So what I'm hearing is that we want to send a communication. We could certainly say this is part of, you know, our ongoing name who we are on the committee, which we also wanted to do at a certain point. So, so if we say we want to do this by, Dan, you threw out May 1st, then that gives us the opportunity to get the quote from Ron, draft a letter, send it around, and let everyone tweak it and go from and get it sent out, and have Nicole do the download of the addresses for us. Does that seem?
The motion didn't have a date associated with it, so I mean, we could wait until fall and do everything all at once too. I mean, we're talking $6,600. You know, maybe it grows a tiny bit over the next 6 months or whatever. That's another option, but the motion is simply to approve the return of that fund, and leaving the timing up to others. I think gives plenty of flexibility, whether it's May 1st, it's in the fall and we did a single correspondence, that sort of thing, just in case it's too onerous. I mean, we're trying to figure out on this call kind of the mechanics of sending out to participants, and it sounds like it would be good to standardize some sort of communication. I think that was your point of putting it on the agenda today. So I'm just observing that the motion doesn't have any sort of date associated with it. And if it turns out that it's in the fall that we do it, I'm personally okay with that. So.
I am too. The one thing that I would add, and I think Rick raises a good point. What do we do for ongoing communications? If this committee wanted to do such type thing, as Gene aptly pointed out, we have no money in the budget. And there may be, this committee's obviously functioning a little bit differently than past committees. And I think, as Dan said, some of that will be T. Rose Price handled, but sounded to me like the PASI doesn't have much of a budget for communication to participants either. So I just think we need to be thinking how that mechanism is going to work. Because I don't know if it's the town's obligation or not, but I think participants are, if there's changes or modifications to their personal accounts, they should be notified.
Yeah.
And I think we're all on that page, Skip. I think we all agree with that.
Right, I agree. It's just a matter of funding. I don't want to have funding get in the way of us being able to do the communication.
I'm totally with you. That's why I raised it. It was like, okay, well, it's not free.
Nicole's got an idea.
Well, we have an account that's just called pension, and what's budgeted is usually the employer contribution for our employees at the town. We have, it's not. There's always been a cushion there, and we've used it there for mailings before because that first mailing was a big push for us. So so we have charged other things there, and I don't think it's a problem doing that. I don't, if it's like Ron said, it's not that expensive. There's certainly money in there to use. I would say, it's anything over $3,000 probably would be taxing, but anything under that, I don't think it would be a big deal.
Right.
So if we're talking $50, we're probably well within that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So the motion is as Dave said, to just approve pro rata sending the money back to the participants, which I think we all do. So can we have a vote on that and move on? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Yes.
I'm sorry, and I actually am going to abstain since that's money coming back to me, which I think we need to talk about further at another time.
Okay, I can appreciate
as a participant.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I understand, and that's a valid decision.
Then I guess I should do as the same.
And her name is Vicky.
Well, we should talk about that going forward because basically everything affects anyone who's already in the plan.
Right.
Her extension is 220.
That's an interesting point. Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, which again, Gina, I emailed you about because in the past we've never really talked about dollars and cents necessarily changing hands, but this particular motion we are. And it just kind of struck me that perhaps this is not an appropriate thing for plan participants to be voting on. But yeah, maybe another time.
Which is interesting because there's a requirement for there to be a Board of Ed and a town employee representative to the board, to this committee. So that does create an interesting dilemma on the voting.
It's just an ethical question. I mean, technically, if they're on the committee, they can vote.
I think there'd be a potential issue if we were talking about something that directly impacted them and only them. I mean, for that matter, my wife's an employee, so if you take it to that extent, I should also abstain.
Yeah, it becomes a tangled web, and I do think there's a materiality measure, and just would a reasonable third party think that there's a conflict and that sort of thing. So I appreciate Holly thinking about that. I'm okay personally, ethically, having folks vote whether they've got an interest or not.
And that's a valid point of Holly to just think about. So you're not voting more for yourself than anyone else. You're voting pro rata for everyone. So, you can think of it that way. But if you're uncomfortable or you do feel uncomfortable voting, you're absolutely welcome to abstain. And anytime someone does that, that's fine.
And it's probably $25 a participant.
It's about
Yeah,
25.
but I don't think the dollar amount should matter. I honestly think it's the process itself. I mean, we have, board members who abstain from voting or even discussing teachers' contracts because their spouse is one of the teachers. So I really think it's more about the principle versus the dollar amount, because at what point do you draw the line on what's appropriate or not appropriate? It's not an issue we need to have solved today, but I'm just throwing it out there. Since we are talking dollars and cents on this one, I'm abstaining.
Okay.
Okay.
Your point, very valid, Holly. It doesn't matter if it's 22 cents or if it's $22,000.
Okay, so back to Dan and Ron.
So,
Thanks.
yeah, thank you. Plugging in my battery so it doesn't die here. So Dan, why don't you continue? It's still I don't know if you've covered all the bases here.
No, and I guess the last thing I'll say about communications is, again, T. Rowe Price is going to handle most, all of your required notifications to participants, right? So anytime there's a fund change, a fee change, anything that's required of us to, or even when we do that plan reset later in the year, we have to notify your participants. So you're talking about customized communications in the future, which I think, obviously there will be a few, but I don't think, historically there'll probably be that many going forward. So last thing I'll say about.
Dan, do you have does your system give you stats on your email capturing of, in other words, your communications are only as good as what you have in the system as far as emails, right?
Well, we do mail out communications too. If we don't have email addresses on the system, we have to, send out communications. But yes, to answer your question, we can get those numbers. I just have to run a report after the fact, and I can put that in a follow up.
Okay.
Okay. So in terms of the changes that were made and voted on and actually, made since the last meeting, was we took the regular plan. So I'll call it the 401A, the larger of the two plans. And as Ron mentioned before, we changed that to what's called a fee leveling methodology, where we basically took all the investments and changed them all to iShare or institutional share class equivalent funds that don't have any revenue sharing built into them, right? The revenue sharing before that was coming out of the investments was paying T. Rowe Price for record keeping, if you will. We've basically, with the help of PASI, changed all those funds to an iShare or an institutional share class equivalent, stripped out all the revenue sharing. So now each participant pays the same exact record keeping fee that everyone else does, right? So if you were in an index fund before as a participant, you weren't paying really any revenue sharing to the plan or for the record keeping services of T. Rowe Price. Whereas if somebody else was in a target date fund, you were paying the lion's share of it. So this is a way to kind of equalize that and a very common practice through the industry. So all the funds were changed to those institutional share class equivalent funds. And we sent out, communications to the participants to tell them that happened. going forward, participants basically just pay an annual asset-based charge. Everyone pays the same amount. It's basically 14 basis points. So whether you're in, again, an index fund or a retirement date fund. But clearly their expense ratios came down as a result of that change. So it should be, actually, I know, Ron, you did an analysis, but I think there was a small savings probably to most participants as well. Yeah.
There was, yeah.
Now with the other plan, the smaller of the two plans that we call the deferred plan, that plan is under $1 million currently, and its institutional share class funds are not available to that plan as of yet. So we do plan on doing the same thing to the deferred plan at a later date when that plan gets gets over the $1 million mark. And I think with the market the way it's going and education, we can get there. It's taken that plan alone over the last 2.5 years has grown substantially. So we did, or I should say Passy did suggest some investment changes to that plan as well, just to kind of keep everything, both plan menus the same, even though the smaller of the two plans still has the revenue sharing funds in it. Any questions about any of that or any of the changes?
All right. Thanks, Dan.
Yep.
Jane, you want me to continue on?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I think part of the agenda also was we have it as sort of a recap of sort of the state of affairs of the investments. So I'm gonna turn that over to Tom. Tom, I don't know if you're going to share your screen, but I think you got some reports that you're just going to sort of go over.
Yeah, I'm gonna let me just see here. There we go. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. All right, this is, we just put together a short report. This is kind of the half-year report. And it's the FI 360, the third party that we hire to provide, a measuring of how each fund is doing. So again, just to recap, FI 360, they're a third party, independent, and they score each fund with a 0 to 100 metric. Using their own formula of measuring performance and Morningstar, pulling in Morningstar data on each fund. It's a 0 to 100 metric, 0 being the best, 100 being the worst. This state of affairs page gives a basic overview of both plans. I've combined both plans into one, and it'll be good because then further on down I can show the comparison of the kind of the old fund versus the new fund, the iShare class and the expense and the changes there. I just need to move this because here we go. Top left-hand side of the page there, investments on watch. That's using some additional criteria that we put into a investment policy statement that's built into the plan. And I don't have that with me today, but what we do use this criteria to qualify a fund for the plan and then therefore qualify it to be on a watch list. Currently, we have one fund on that watch list. It's called the Eaton Vance High Income Opportunities Fund. It has only been on the watch list for 1 quarter, and we don't have a recommended action at this time for this fund. We are going to give it more time. As a matter of fact, this is based off of 12/31 numbers. The fund has had a really good run in the first quarter here. The character of the market has changed quite a bit since November when the vaccine news hit. A lot of the areas of the market that had been left behind last year that were all internet related, e-commerce related, all the cloud computing and all of that, more traditional industries have come back in. Sorry, did somebody have a question? To continue, so one on watch, and we're going to just continue to watch that fund, and we believe it's going to drop off the list probably this quarter because it's had a nice run and its performance has picked up quite a bit. 43 basis points of weighted net expense ratio. That's based on where all the assets are in the plan. Again, this is combining the regular plan with the deferred comp plan, so they're both in there together. The 43 basis points did drop from 49 basis points in our previous report. Weighted average FI 360 fiduciary score is 20 out of 100, so that's an A for the plan as a whole. Weighted average of all the funds and where the money is. One IPS warning. So what that means is we built a core list of Morningstar categories that we want in the plan, and one of those categories isn't filled, but it is filled, and I'll show you in a moment. We're using the American Funds Washington Mutual, which is technically by Morningstar, a large blend fund. The category that's missing is a large value, and we use that as a large value fund. So we think it's represented, but to be technical, the IPS picks it up as a warning. So
I just want to jump in real quick because, again, I think we explained all this stuff to you on our last meeting about how the FI 360 works and the scorecard. But I just want to point out that we talked earlier about the investment policy statement that you all are going to review. I know, Rick, you've read it, and I think it's on the agenda at some point for you guys to read it and approve it, I believe is what the outcome is going to be, Gene?
No, there's one standing and approved right now, but we discussed that we were going to review it. And I guess this presentation begs the question, we want to make sure that there's only one IPS that's overriding it, that's overseeing everything, so.
I guess my question is, which is the one that you're reviewing? Tom, did you send them out the IPS that this is feeding off of?
well, I believe they have the report from last time that we would include the IPS that's built into the system. But I think that they have one that is from a previous, or, before we came on board potentially. Is that correct, Gene?
It's dated December 3rd, 2014.
Yeah. So I can clearly say, so the the idea of this presentation and the way we do our work is we do need a built-in IPS, and that was going to answer one of somebody's questions that says if we have one who's reading it. That's the idea of FI 360 and its power of technology, is that when we build the IPS, it reads off of the data points that are in that IPS. So I think what I'm hearing is the one that was built in 2014, what was approved, I don't think is Tom, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it identical to the one that's in here?
No, I would say that's this is a new format.
So,
sure.
So what I would suggest is review the one that we're using. That's the one that we've sort of built off of all these data points, where it says one investment is on watch or IPS warning, and what triggers a fund on watch versus what triggers a fund to replace. What are we looking for? What's the criteria? We built all that into this. And the nice thing about this system is it does read it. It alerts us to that. So once we build the IPS, it's a very, very powerful system to be able to say, well, you said in this IPS based on these criteria that you want this on watch, and that's what that's what the system flags. So
Ron, Ron, if I can, one thing that has to be made clear is the investment committee has to proactively agree and adopt the investment policy statement. I'm sure the investment policy statement you've built and has been the de facto one thus far is a fine investment policy statement, but we need to get a copy of that, and we as a committee have to affirmatively agree that that's the investment policy statement.
And that was the point of me sort of interjecting. I just want to make sure that's exactly why I'm bringing that up, because I don't want to have parallel investment policy statements, one being that wasn't approved. So that's exactly, I do agree with it.
Yeah, so we'll look at that. I guess one big question is asset allocation. I've never seen it presented this way, so it's very hard to figure out what's equity, what's bonds, I see corporate, I don't see you
Well,
know,
we can show you that. We can show you that in this report, Tom. You can just jump right to it. There's a section in here that shows it all.
okay.
That will show it to you real quickly. I mean, this is just a landing page, but here's what you're probably looking at. You know, it shows the assets, the percentage of the total, and it gives you the peer group. It gives you the, you know, if it's U.S. equity versus international. So I think this is what you're looking for.
Well,
So
yeah, I don't know until I've seen the whole thing, but you know, allocation is the biggest piece on that landing page, and
Correct.
I don't know what that means. Is that all
Well,
equity?
Target date funds?
Cash? Is it?
Well, don't forget each participant then selects from the core list. We're just showing you the sort of the core list menu of where it's all based on everybody's election. So with this landing page basically says that you have, if you really wanted to do the pie chart, you'd say in total, the plan in total. Don't forget, we don't manage the plan, the participants manage the plan. So,
Yeah.
you know, the allocation, so the 29, you know, the allocation funds, which is $5 million, you know, almost half the assets are in target. Those are the target dates. You know, the 31% or almost 32% is in quote U.S. equities. That's a broad terminology, and so on. So then
Dave,
when
was
you
your
drill
question
down onto that
about
other page,
allocation? Dave, was your question just to define allocation?
Yeah, I guess thinking about this, what would be most helpful is what the selection is available to folks and how those selections have performed based on their benchmarks would be easier, because this is interesting, but it doesn't help us evaluate whether the funds that have been available to participants are doing well or not. Right?
Yeah, we have that as well. So,
Right.
So
do you have the scorecard?
yeah, I do. Let me, just before I jump to that, I just want to say, I think this page kind of illustrates where we are. You know, you can see the different class shares between the two different plans. So, you know, the T. Rowe Price Dividend Growth Fund is in the deferred comp. And then we've got now a institutional class share in the deferred growth. And that's the one that doesn't have any additional fees. It's a very,
Well,
the least expensive.
I think what scorecard, how well the fund's doing against its peer groups. So we do have that. I just want to make sure that
that's kind of the punchline for us. Like,
yeah, oh, I get it. Yeah, we'll cut to the chase. So Tom, why don't you sort of, I mean, again, the score, go to the landing page one quick time, you know, just in general, the scorecard, you know, in general is giving you, I think, what was it, a 20 out of 100, Tom?
Yes, that's the whole, those are both plans combined.
Yeah, so we drill down into, are you starting with the asset allocations, or where are you starting, Tom?
Well, I just figured most of the money is in the target date funds, so we could illustrate, you know, the old share class versus the new share class, and then, you know, how they're doing.
Yeah, again, I just want them to see that besides this, that it starts with each fund, and it gives a very detailed, you know, FI 360, you know, demonstration, plus the criteria that we've added on top gives it that score. And it does show the benchmarks as to, I'm not sure if it shows it in this one, but it will show.
Yeah, and we have benchmarks.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, if you want to start with the go ahead.
Let me just jump right in. So let's look at the target date 2015 fund. So over here, we have both funds. We have the regular, both plans, the iShare and the regular T. Rowe Price 2015 fund. So the FI 360 score, again, a 0, that's the current score. And that's 0 to 100, so you can't get better than 0. It's a perfect score. And then you have the trailing rolling averages of the score, going back 1, 3, 5, and 10 year. The reason that there's no score for the institutional class shares, this must be a new vintage for T. Rowe Price, so there isn't technically you know, performance numbers for that, or at least the FI 360 score. Over here, very important stuff, the total return and the percentile rank in the group. So you have the total return over 1 year, 12.57%. That's in the 7th percentile for the group, the target date 2015 Morningstar category. Very, very strong performance relative to the group. And you can see here 12.57 or 12.81, the lower class share. I'm jumping around a little bit here, but I just want to point out net expense ratio, 55 basis points down to 40. So we dropped that fund by 15 basis points when we went to the institutional class share. So we'll go back to the institutional class share, 12.81%. Relative performance of the group was 11.38. So it's outperforming the group by like about 1.5%. Very powerful, showing that the fund is doing really well relative to the group, which, by the way, has 106 other funds that are doing the same thing that they're competing against. Does that provide?
And again, this is done, Tom, if you could just sort of glance up the report, this is done on every single fund that's in your plan.
Perfect.
So, and then, you know, just so you know, the reds are, you know, our interpretation, you know, if it flags it, you know, then it's up to us to say or present, you know, what's the next steps? Do we keep it on the watch list, or do we finally, you know, pull the trigger? And just so you know, again, Tom, if you could just, I don't know if you have it here, I apologize if it's not, but it reads off of the IPS. So the
No,
IPS,
I don't have the IPS built into this report, but I can supply that to them.
yeah. So when you guys mentioned that you have a review or you're going to review the IPS, I'm not sure which one you were reviewing. That was why I sort of jumped in to say I think it might be the one that we sent them, Tom. Is that or Gene, can you help me out on which, or Rick, maybe which one you're reviewing or about to review?
I think it was one from 2014, so it's not the one that we.
That's the one that you're all reviewing, is the 2014? 2014?
To state again, we need to review whichever one is overriding this plan, and it sounds as if there's an IPS that, unless anybody else on the committee has it in their possession, I don't have it in my possession. I'm sure it's a good IPS, but we want to make sure that we proactively approve it. So we need that IPS.
Well, then you don't have. That's what I was trying to clarify. Did you read the one? So Tom, we will get that out to Gene, the one that is, you know, using it off of this metrics, and we will get that all to the committee members, because in my opinion, that's the one you should be reading and hopefully approving.
And it was included in the report that we reviewed in September.
Okay, then we should all have that. And if folks don't, I will make sure that, when you send me this report to send out to everyone, if you can include that in that package, that would be great.
Sure.
Just to be sure we're all on the same, looking at the same documents.
Yeah, I agree.
Sure.
I agree.
And I'll send the old report also, just so you have that again, and if you don't have it on your records.
Tom, anything else you want to highlight in the sort of the snapshot of you know, our year?
Yeah, there's a lot of pages to review. You know, we always like to look at this one. I think this is a powerful page here to show how the plan is doing. So if we took the plans and created a portfolio for the plans out of where the allocations are now, and then compared those same allocations to the Morningstar categories as a whole, you kind of have a good comparison of how the plan is doing versus a blended benchmark, so to speak. So the graph shows a red line there that is the portfolio as a whole. And this is hypothetical performance based on how the plan is allocated right now. So, in historical performance. So you can see over the 1, 3, 5 year, we'll go to the 3 year, 10.41% over average return over the last 3 years has outperformed the peer benchmark or Morningstar category with the same allocations by 1.16%. So that kind of shows that the selections have done better in general than the categories that they are in. And that's, I think, a good illustration. And then also over here, standard deviation of performance is a measure of how much volatility these funds have. So we were able to outperform the categories with less volatility than the Morningstar category. So kind of the best of both worlds, which is what we're looking for in a retirement plan.
Okay. Is there any, again, we typically do the annual, which we did not too long ago. This is sort of just a quick update. The funds obviously haven't changed, and we haven't suggested any replacements. Is there any questions on what's been presented so far, or something that in addition, you want to see?
I guess, are there any suggestions that you may have that we would need to take action on at this meeting?
No, I mean, the only fund that was flagged by our watch list criteria was the Eaton Vance High Income Fund. And we want to stick with that fund. We think they're a very capable team and very good managers. And we think that, matter of fact, the performance is proving that it's probably going to fall off the watch list this quarter or shortly thereafter.
Okay, thank you.
But I will say we reserve the right to change our minds or change our assessment, and we will provide you with the proper paperwork to make a change should we decide to do so.
Thanks, Tom. Any other questions on fund selections and state of affairs of how they're doing so far? Okay. I think the key area, the last part of this was just setting up participant meetings, the engagement process. We talked about an investment policy statement. We like to sort of refer to it as an educational policy statement. What is the expectations, from the committee? How can we assist in those expectations? I don't think we've really defined, and obviously in a pandemic world, it's a little difficult to do those type of meetings. But what we typically do at PASI is we do a one-on-ones via Zoom. We would pick a date with the town and with the school district. We would send out sign-up sheets, typically 10 to 15 minutes per person. And then we would spend as much time during the day, depending on how many people signed up, on doing one-on-ones. So we would sort of bring them into the Zoom room. We'd pull up their account. We'd go over their accounts, make sure they're properly allocated. It also gives us opportunities to talk about different things that we talk, the future things that are happening within the plan. We could even reinforce that reallocation of monies. Anytime we have an opportunity to talk to the participants, we can share information as best we can. And then, of course, TIRO, can also assist in different topics. I know they have a pretty good, I would say the trend these days is not just to focus financially on, the plan. They're doing more of a overall wellness, financial wellness program, if you will. We've talked to the town about that, Dan. I think you at the time you were using Dave Ramsey's group, to sort of, buy onto that module. I don't know if that's changed, but if you want to talk real quickly about anything T. Rowe Price could do as a overall topic of education, feel free.
Yes. So we've got a library of topics, as Ron mentioned, and your plan is contracted with us to do an entire day, or each plan, I should say, to do an entire day of education each year. So, what that used to look like in a non-pandemic world was, group sessions held by our education team. We've got regional education specialists that used to, go on site and do group education sessions or one-on-ones. The one-on-ones we do obviously are a bit different than what PASI can do, because obviously our folks can't give specific advice, but they can certainly walk people through websites and things like that. In the current state of affairs with, the pandemic, those meetings are still happening, obviously just done, via Zoom as well. So we can do group sessions still. As I mentioned, it's a whole day though. So we can do a meeting at 8:30 in the morning, 10 a.m., 12, 3, and 4, whatever, so people can log in at their leisure. And topic related, as Ron mentioned, we have financial wellness, budgeting, are you saving enough for retirement? I've got a library that I can share to figure that out. Or we can just offer a bunch of different topics and people can log into whichever one they want. But that is something you get with your plan at T. Rowe Price. There's no additional fee for that.
Yeah, again, the most effective that we see is those one-on-ones. People really want to drill down and get specific questions. They're not going to do it in a group setting. The problem with the group settings is the engagement. How do you get the town or how do you get the school district to sort of get this information out? My experience is most people don't want to sit through a long presentation. You have to grab them in the first few minutes. They want to see little pieces of information that they can retain. But again, I guess our question to the committee, and I don't think we've discussed it, is where we build an investment policy statement that gives us the blueprint of how we're managing the assets and how we put things on watch. I think we can also fairly say you can do an educational policy statement as to what expectations you have. It could be a quarterly initiative. It could be the one-on-ones once a year, twice a year. I think we just need a little guidance also on what the expectations of the committee are as well. And that might be something you guys talk about in another meeting.
So I definitely believe we want you to be doing these, meetings with participants. I think that's critical. The question is, are you prepared to, jump in and, when can you start? When, if we pick a date, can you do it in the next quarter, sometime in the next quarter? That's for the school participants. Trying to get them to do stuff over the summer is not good because most of them aren't in the buildings. Right. I don't think that'll be the case this year, but certainly we don't want to, require people to use their non-working time necessarily to do this.
Yeah, the answer is yes. We're prepared to do that. It's just coordinating with Nicole on her side to say here's the sign-up sheet. Let's get that disseminated to staff members. However, again, you can disseminate that for these 10 to 15 minute sessions where we can do the one-on-ones. Yeah, so to answer your question, Gene, yes, we're prepared to do that at any time. It's always a balancing act of coordinating the time that the folks can set aside and what the town certainly allows them to do at any particular time.
Ron, I'm looking at the meeting minutes from our September 9th, 2020 meeting, and one of the items in the minutes, a takeaway, was PASI to make arrangements to do Zoom conference with participants to discuss their investments.
So we definitely want you to do it.
No, well, I did send an email out, and I believe that it was forwarded to town hall or to maybe to Tim to coordinate a meeting, and I never got a response back to set up the meeting.
Yeah, I guess we're, it's a struggle. Who does the coordination of that? Again, we can offer the date, we can offer the technology. It's just who's going to be responsible on either the school or town side to make that happen.
We probably want to split town and gown, I should think.
Well, I would agree that it makes sense for the town to have theirs separate from the school district, just because it makes it simpler in a lot of ways. So,
yeah.
Well, the other reason is that the town has both plan. They have the 401A and the 457 plan, and where the school district does not have the 457 plan. They are part of a different. They're part of the school district's 457. So, again, more the reason to parse those out.
I'm willing to help out for the town employees if that helps. I'm not sure what will entail of it, but I'm definitely willing to help.
Thank you.
Can I just say something? This is Nicole. In the past, we've, like I said, Tom has come, and we've done this in the past. It's all got coordinated through Kathy Frank. She had the school and the town employees sign up, and they came over to town hall, and that way PASI just was in one location for 1 day or 2 days as necessary. And so I did get an email from the guys at Passy, and I did forward it on to Tim to pick a date or for his office to coordinate. And I think that's just where it ended. So it is something that they've done in the past, and we've coordinated it in the past as well, but it might make sense to break it up.
Okay, well, I can, so I will take on, being the coordinator between the town and the school district, since I have a relationship in both locations. Currently anyway, because I am on the school board and I do work pretty closely with Holly and Ian. So we can come up with a plan, whether it's through Michelle and Tim's office or through Ian and Jeannie at the school district. We can figure out what works best. So it might be best, Tom and Ron, if you forward that to me, and then I'll take it from there to
Okay.
coordinate with them. That way at least we're all on the same page and we know where it stands.
That'd be good. Thank you.
That'd be good. Okay, thank you for that. We will get started on that right away. I have a hard stop in 4:15, unfortunately. But
Okay, are there other issues that you wanted to share with us?
There really wasn't. The only other issue was it was some question I think you had, Gene. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that legislative pension question versus the current plan. And it was really a no issue because that had to do with defined benefit plans. So it didn't relate to this.
Right, that's what I had thought. I had gotten a communication from someone that there was legislation that was offering town pensions to participate in the state pension program on some level, and asked the folks at Passy to look at it. But if you say it doesn't apply to us, that makes sense. And that was my initial take, but I figured I'd ask the experts.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's good. So yeah, those were our prepared statements. Any questions and answers, we're here to finish it up.
Any questions from the committee to the folks at Passy or T Row?
Nope.
The only other thing on our agenda was to pick the next meeting date. And do Tuesday afternoons work for folks? If so, I would just say let's pick a date now and put it on our calendars.
It's okay by me.
Okay by me.
So in September, the later two Tuesdays are the 21st and the 28th. Anyone have a preference?
No preference right now.
All right, well, let's say the 21st at 3 o'clock and we'll, go from there. And if we have to change it as it gets closer, we can do that. But I figure putting it on a calendar 6 months out usually helps people to lock it in. So.
All right, Gene, what day was that? I'm sorry.
It was September 21st, which is a Tuesday.
Got it.
And 3 p.m. seemed to be reasonable for everyone. I don't know at this point if we will be in the office. I mean,
good question.
Who knows how we'll be meeting? So we'll leave that as an open question.
Fingers crossed, right?
Yeah.
Thank you for your thankless duty, Gene. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Gene. Excellent
Thanks,
job
Gene.
as usual. Thank you very much. Thank you all for me too.
Okay, well, if there is nothing else, I think we can adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.